Welcome to Rated Radio Plus. I'm your host, Shane Wyndham. This is Counting Crows versus Matchbox 20. Let's dig in. We're going to start here with Matchbox 20, which was recommended by a listener named Laura, who just happens to be my oldest sister. Can't tell, we started close to home here, but I'm glad you showed up here, Laura. Let's see what we've got. Should be obvious, by the way, that this came from listener recommendations. This was not a hand-picked selection, nor was this a completely random one. So the Matchbox album that rolled was More Than You Think You Are from 2002. Out of the 13 tracks, I thought 8 were great. My bottom track was You're So Real. My top track was Hand Me Down. The music makes me feel like I found Baz Luhrmann while looking for Cameron Crowe. This disc is much more rock and pop forward than their previous outings. Where their debut would register squarely in the late 90s alternative genre, this one feels much more in line with the early work of Maroon 5 or the later work of Nickelback. Personally, those are musical drugs I appreciate. Funky, gritty, and direct to the vein though the hits are. What's surprising is just how well produced each instrument is, as well as how solidly the band worked to ensure both spacing in the wall of sound and a respectable degree of melodic variety for each member's part. Much like Def Leppard, the group even manages ballads where no one's left out. And it still works, while nowhere near as earthy in its emotive qualities, because again, this is a pop rock effort. The plasticity of top-tier production doesn't stop most tracks from packing the appropriate punch. Think the production of Styx or Queen, as opposed to the production of Zeppelin or Floyd, only more in line with the sound of a group like Three Doors Down. I respect that the band is trying to do something a bit more bombastic and well-rounded than they have before, but this comes at the cost of sometimes weakening Rob Thomas's vocal appeal, in addition to creating lyrical content that's a bit more hokey than fans of the group's first two spins may care for. It's more akin to The Fray or his solo debut than it is to, say, his deeply personal work with Tabitha's Secret. The trajectory is fairly common among band discographies, just a matter of time till the group put on their suits and churched up the sound, literally in this case. The musicianship is competent and eclectic, and it stands above many of its contemporaries as a result, but I do miss them driving in the lane they'd previously cleared for themselves more than I'm comfortable with. If you're hoping for more songs like Bright Lights or Unwell, and fewer like Disease, then this likely won't be your favorite by Matchbox, technically impressive though it is. Let's take a break. If you're new here, I apologize. I cut through that pretty fast. That was my album review for Matchbox 20. Now I'm going to talk about a Billboard song, and then we'll go on to Counting Crows. So the TikTok Billboard hit I listened to this time around was a song called Keep Up by Odatari. What little emotions that this song stirs within me are all at odds. I somewhat appreciate that there are genuine melodies at work, as well as a discernible chorus, and a few enjoyable frills. But I'm also somewhat annoyed by the oversped electronic instrumental, the heavy reliance on effects, the bland vocals, the brainless lyrics, the collapsible bridge, and the slowdown at the end. Okay, so I admit the negatives may be winning this war. Hell, I'll go a step further. In a world so full of worthwhile entertainment options, which are probably more now than any individual could tackle in a single lifetime, I feel worse off for having listened to this song. It belongs in some weak racing video game, which you should also avoid wasting time on. 4 out of 10 stars from me. Now let's go talk about Counting Crows. Counting Crows were also in our listener recommendations. They actually showed up twice, once from another sister of mine named Katie, and once from my buddy Brian. So the album that I got was Recovering the Satellites from 1996. Out of the 14 tracks, I thought 10 were great. My bottom track was Walkaways, and my top track was I'm Not Sleeping. The music makes me feel like I'm walking a dirt road in a big city on a gray day. And if you're paying attention, you can probably already see why that's kind of catching me, because if you're in a big city, you're not likely to find a dirt road. Anyway, much like watching Sling Blade, this album feels like home. It's a lot of singer-songwriter rock, or if you prefer, countryside alternative. Not country, mind you. There's that same undercurrent of feel-good church piano you also get from Sean Mullen's Soul's Core album, only this disc is much more inward-facing and lonely in its poeticism. Additionally, there's an argument to be made that the duality of musical themes present throughout laid much of the groundwork for their Across a Wire double disc live, which had one disc full of electronic anthems and another packed with complex acoustic reworks. You can count on some sort of solo in nearly every song, often with a third verse to follow, and it's almost always worth hearing if you care about the words. If I had to complain, I'd say that the band shining so brightly comes with Adam's vocals often being out of their best element, the gentler, more intimate one. The piano work in Miller's Angels is a bit too similar to A Long December, and some pieces of some tracks don't feel like they were quite ready for the big time just yet. I'm not in love with the way the album begins or ends either, though both tracks are redeemable in their own right. My ratings may look like I've got major issues with Mercury and Miller's Angels as well, but that's not entirely true. Mercury is a solid song, it's just not trying to be anything more than what the verses and choruses offer up. And while I love so much about Miller's Angels, including most of the extended ending, I craved more from the bridge and less repetition from the very end of the song. But don't misunderstand me here. This is a fantastic album, more lyrically subtle while more abrasive in its twangy rock frills than their debut. And that makes it easy for me to underestimate when I'm not actively listening to it. When in the thick of it, however, this thing is not something I've ever been capable of turning off. So whoever thinks you can't go home again clearly has yet to hear the Recovering the Satellites LP. Please like or subscribe if you're still listening, and remember you can send all kinds of feedback to rated_radio@yahoo.com, an easy way to get your voice on the show. As for the winner, I have a soft spot for both of these groups and could easily have seen the matchup going either way depending on which albums kicked out of the randomizer. But I'm glad to see that things landed where they did because that mirrors my core opinion pretty closely, which is to say that the Counting Crows edge Matchbox 20 out. I like both bands for somewhat different reasons, and there's a time and place for each. But some of you may recall me having talked a few times about Adam Duritz being one of my favorite lyricists, and that's what gives Counting Crows the edge. Still, if you're ever staring down the early work of either outfit, don't hesitate to take that deep dive. After all, Rob Thomas has been known to have a serious way with words as well. Anyway, that's going to do it for now. Catch the main show every Friday at 9 a.m. and I'll be back with more Rated Radio Plus in 2 weeks. Plenty of time to fill your world with music.